Hey, thank you for coming by, Brian for Liberty. I certainly appreciate taking the time to check things out here. I know your schedules are all very busy, so I do appreciate your time. Please hit the subscribe button, like the content, and share it if you think it has some value. Today I'm going to be addressing the Rayshard Brooks shooting. I actually wanted to take some time on this and read some articles. They had a great article out there with some legal scholars watching the video and kind of breaking it down point by point, which was really good. I wanted to make sure that I watched the video in its entirety, all the video that was available on. I think there are a lot of things here, and I think as a society, there's a lot we could stand to learn from this terrible incident. And I think we actually could stand to learn more from this than even the George Floyd situation, because George Floyd's death was a murder on camera. There's no question. There was no gray area with George Floyd's murder. He was murdered in cold blood on camera. So we're not debating his death. Rayshard Brooks, I think, is going to lead to a great deal of debate in this country. I think it's going to lead to some different conclusions. And I think that people are going to watch this video and a lot of people are going to say the police were justified in the shooting. I find it surprising that the officer has already been charged. I find it surprising that he was fired, but I think that has a lot to do with the current political climate. I think we all know. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't know, and I can't put myself in that officer's shoes in that moment and tell you what I would have done differently. In that moment, at the moment of the shooting, I don't know how we can look at that and say, I know unequivocally this is how I would have handled it better. This is how it should have been done differently. I think that's difficult. What I look at is everything that led up to it. I think one of the first things I would want to bring up is the fact that they are not required to arrest him. And operating while intoxicated or driving under the influence, suspicion, he never made it to court, so he's not guilty of that. The fact that he blew a point whatever is not evidence that he was guilty of anything, because if you do your research on breathalyzers, they're notoriously unreliable tools to measure alcohol content. They are often dismissed in cases. The other thing is I didn't necessarily notice that he failed his field sobriety tests, which usually the field sobriety test is what is supposed to create the probable cause for the breathalyzer itself. That's my understanding. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. But just because they suspect that he was operating under the influence, and that's all it was, at that moment, he's not guilty of it. They just suspect that he's been operating while intoxicated. They're not required to take him into custody and to arrest him and to take him to jail. That's not a requirement of the officers there. I have personally been pulled over after having a few drinks. I was at dinner for a company event, and I had a few beers with my meal over the course of a few hours. Was not drinking heavily by any stretch of the imagination. Didn't feel that I was impaired in any way. Got behind the wheel, I'm driving my wife's car, which didn't have automatic headlights like mine did. So I get pulled over because the headlights are on, but the brake lights don't come on unless you actually flip the switch, which I didn't do. So get pulled over. I get out of the car, take a field sobriety test, take a breathalyzer. The officers on the scene told me that at that moment, if they would be within their rights to take me to jail. They did not do that. They did not issue me a citation. They didn't issue me a warning. They let me go under just the promise that I wouldn't drive for the rest of the evening, that my wife would finish driving us home. That was it. And I went on my way and nothing ever happened. Now, it's a different scenario because this man is on probation, which is probably what led them to the need to take him into custody. But when we look at policing, what do we want from our police department? What do we want? What is their number one goal? What is the primary training? I think the first goal of the police department, number one, above all else, is public safety. That's goal number one. So Rayshard Brooks is part of the public. They're responsible for his safety as well. So that's important, because what's the shortest route to safety is maintaining a respectful conversation, which is exactly what they were having. He was identified. They knew who he was. They had frisked him. They knew he was not armed. They did not catch him operating his vehicle. He was actually sleeping. And on more than one occasion, he asked to just be allowed to go to his sister's, which apparently was within walking distance. So I guess my question is in the interest of public safety, they decided that the best course of action was to escalate this confrontation and attempt to take him into custody after a very long and respectful exchange. While they're wrestling with him, he's still referring to the officer as Mr. It never devolved. I don't think there was a reason for it to have to go and devolve into the confrontation that it was. In my opinion, I guess the way that I look at things, when you are speeding, if you're doing a 85 and a 60 and you get pulled over by the police, what are the odds that they're going to try and take you into custody and put you in jail? There's a lot of stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis that's illegal. The number of laws on the books is insane. But at the end of the day, how often do the police actually need to take a person into custody in handcuffs and put them in a cell in order to protect the public safety? At the end of the day, if they had arrested this guy, put him in jail, he probably would have called his sisters. They probably would have came and bailed him out. So the whole exercise would have taken 5-6 hours. By the time they arrested him, did the paperwork, put him in a room, he calls his sisters, they come and bail him out, and then he goes home. Which I know the argument is, well, then he shouldn't have resisted. He should have just gone. I get that. I'm not defending his fight with the police department or with the police. What I'm saying is was there a necessity to take him to jail in that moment? And I don't think there was, personally. And I think that when we look at our police department, we say, your job is to keep us safe. That doesn't mean I shouldn't be punished for a crime. That doesn't mean that we don't write him up and identify him and create a summons and make him go back to court and defend himself for OWI. And if he's found guilty, then he's in violation of his probation and he goes back to jail. I'm fine with that. But to escalate that situation in that moment seemed unnecessary. You're having a respectful conversation, get him home, you know where he is, and then go get him the next day. Go get him the next day with more officers if you feel like he needs to be arrested. Issue a summons and get him to court. I mean, we're not in this scenario where this guy is on a rampage and he has to be locked away for the public safety. That wasn't the case. Their job is to protect the public safety. So I don't know that putting him in a jail cell was in the interest of public safety. So I've posted this. I've had these conversations in social media about this particular case. I find that a lot of people are pushing back on this one against me. And that's fine. And like I said, if you watch the whole video, certainly in the moment of the shooting, you could say, it's hard to say that officer, like I said, I'm actually surprised that the officer is being charged. And I'm surprised that he was fired so quickly based on what I saw. But I'm not a professional legal expert. And, I understand what the political climate is right now. But at the end of the day, Rayshard Brooks is dead. And if we can't take this and say, is there something that we're doing? Is there a way that we can make police better and our procedures better to prevent this kind of a thing from happening again? When I think if you watch the whole thing, it's pretty obvious that it didn't have to go down like this. Obviously, the suspect made some mistakes, but let's just keep in mind that somebody here has got to be responsible to de-escalate this situation, and it should be the armed, trained professionals, not the suspect who is potentially inebriated. Like, it's not his job to keep things from escalating. It's the officer's job to keep things from escalating. So that's it. That's what I wanted to put something out on it. Nobody likes talking about these things. I think at the end of the day, what we really need to do is just make sure that we take an opportunity to learn something from this. I'm sure it's going to be overshadowed by some of the other things that are going on, but anytime there's a tragedy like this, we need to take time and we need to discuss it. We need to learn from it. So, hey, thank you very much for stopping by. Again, on Sunday, I'm hoping to get out my first. I watched 13th, so I'm absolutely hoping to be able to have the time to put together a decent video that has some response to that. As well as, like I said before, on Tuesday, I'm reading Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics right now. I'm really enjoying it, and I want to talk about like the first 100 pages of that book and kind of my thoughts on that. And then any other news stuff that pops up between now and then, I'll also be discussing. I'm going to be away, so it's going to be a little bit hard to get a video out on Sunday, but I'm going to do my best to get it recorded and set up and have it out. So hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications so you know when my next video is coming out. And once again, thank you for stopping by, and as always, we will see you next time.